What's up guys, welcome back to the shop. Today's video we're working on a knife made from ball bearings. This knife is going to be a little bit different. I'm actually not going to use any powder in this guy. I'm going to try something new and hopefully it works. There's a certain pattern I'm trying to get, but we won't find out to the end if we get it, so stay tuned for that. And first thing I'm going to do is clean up my ball bearings, make sure I get any residue off of them, that way I can ensure a good forge weld. Hopefully these balls are 52-100, but they have a chrome outer layer to them, and that chrome is very difficult to get to weld together, so it's very important to do as much as I can to make sure I get a nice solid forge weld. As always, we're going to start by forging from the top down. Since I don't have any powder in this, it goes down a lot easier, but I should have squished it down a lot more, probably twice as much, because you can see right here the cap starts falling off and a lot of those ball bearings start popping out. Those ball bearings are going to be at the top and the bottom of the billet, so they're going to cool a little bit faster, so I have to compress them more. So here I'm going to recompress it and I'm pressing it back out again to a square. And here I did my signature lid removal to try to loosen up the can inside. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the can off because when I pressed it from the top after it had already opened, it created a little lip, and that lip wasn't going to let anything out. So I struggled a little bit more than usual on this one, but no big deal. Just got to put a little bit more elbow grease into it. By the way, if my voice sounds a little bit off, I am a bit under the weather. Hopefully I'll be good for the next video and we won't have any issues. But as you all know, the show must go on. Gonna remove the can from the canister and continue forging. Here I'm spraying it with some WD-40, hoping it'll seep into all those little cracks and minor voids that are in the inside, and hopefully get us a nice solid weld on the inside without any or too many gaps. One thing I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to take it slow and trying to take it in steps. I'm trying to compress the square as much as possible. There's always going to be cracking on the outside. There's nothing I can really do to prevent that, because ball bearings are already difficult to do with powder. Without powder, they always want to crack. You're going to see down further into the build, whenever I'm forging my knife out by hand, those cracks are predominant, and no matter what I do, no matter how hard I forge it, those little surface cracks want to come out. So I'm being very careful and trying to press it as much as I can, but trying to work it nice and slow. So here I got my billet. It's coming out pretty good, no complaints here so far, and hopefully inside it's all properly welded. But before I actually forge out my knife from here, I'm actually going to grind back all these rough edges like you see right here, because those are more than likely, once I start forging, going to become cold shots, and it's really just going to mess things up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it to the 2x72 on a 36 grip belt, and I'm just going to clean it up as much as I need to, and then we'll get to forging our knife out of this. Here I'm using a very aggressive diamond coated wheel, and I'm using it to clean up in all those little cracks. So this is what the billet looks like afterwards. It's pretty clean, and we're going to start forging in our tip. Lately, in the last couple of videos, I've been getting some comments from some viewers complaining that why am I cutting out my tip, why am I cutting out my knife? If I'm already forging, why don't I forge it all the way? The main reason that I choose to do a stock removal versus forging out the tip is because that causes a lot of pattern distortion. Here I'm forging in my tip because pattern distortion really isn't an issue. Those are the little cracks I was talking about. I have to flux and hopefully keep them nice and clean. Back to what I was saying, pattern distortion isn't really an issue on this knife because they're all individual ball bearings. The more I can manipulate it, the cooler the pattern is going to look. But on certain ones, you want the pattern to stay. specifically the way it's coming out. You don't want the pattern to, move around as much. So that's why I do that. And here I'm cutting in a little step, that way I can forge in my handle without having any issues. And I'm cutting off excess material. Now that I look back at it, this did look like a little bit of material that I left for the handle, but it came out being just alright. So fortunately I didn't have any issues with that. So here I'm just going to start forging in my tang. This knife is going to be a hidden tang knife. I like to get into forging my knives as much as I can, because to me a very big important part of doing this is learning how to forge, specifically not getting too rusty. But I do go to the hydraulic press whenever it's necessary, just because it saves my arm and my shoulder for the future, and I don't want to overstress myself if it's not necessary. I mean, that's the whole point of having tools. I've had people tell me before, oh, why don't you forge it all by hand the way it used to be done? Well, man, it's 2024 and I have a hydraulic press, so I'm going to use it. And here I'm using the press to isolate the tang just a little bit more to give me that step I need to transition from my choil, I think it's called, the knife choil, whatever, to transition into my handle. It doesn't matter in the long run because I ended up grinding it farther in because I like where it ended up. But that's the beautiful thing about the grinder. You can always fix any little mistakes that you don't like down the road. And I'm not speaking for everyone, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm self-taught and I don't really know much of what I'm doing. I'm just kind of repeating what I see. So it's okay not to get it right on the first time, and using the grinder to fix as much as possible. Hopefully one day I can force to finish as good as somebody like Neo Kamimura, but until then, the grinder is my friend. Here I'm forging in my bevels as much as possible. Not really because I need to forge them in per se, because I'm leaving the knife pretty thick pre-heat treat, because I don't want to risk any cracks or those surface cracks being a little too deep. But the main reason why I'm forging them in is so I can get a little bit more width on my knife heel, because I like my chef's knives to have a bit of a tall heel. I end up giving this knife quite a bit of a curve. I give it a flattish heel and a bit of a curve to it, mainly because I don't really have a set design I want for this knife. And I just think that curve, that aggressive curve, is pretty cool. So sometimes I just go with the flow. And here I am stamping in my maker's mark. I've been stamping in as of late because I've run out of stickers to do my maker's mark. But maybe down the line, hopefully sooner than later, I can get me a laser etcher so I can do my maker's mark, and that would be pretty cool. I've seen a lot of makers have them and they seem pretty happy with it. Here I'm profiling the knife, getting it to the shape that I want, cleaning it up as much as possible. But I'm not going to take any material off the actual thickness of the blade. I'm just going to go straight into heat treat from here. That way I minimize the risk of major warps and of major cracking. So here I'm going to heat treat the knife. And I do the temper off screen. Alright guys, so we're at the tempo. It looks pretty good. Got a nice solid knife, little tiniest of warps, no big deal. I have a lot to grind off anyways, but I'm gonna give it a muriatic acid wash for two reasons. First reason, to soften out the scales so that when I get it off, I don't have any issues. Well, three, I guess, to clean in all these little cracks. You can see those cracks. That's from when I was forging it. Those ball bearings, they're just surface cracks on the inside of the steel. So this is the piece that I cut off the end. As you can see, it's forge welded. There's no real cracks in there or anything like that. So I'm very confident that the knife is forge welded all completely well. But as I work it, I have to work it extremely hot, and as it gets lower and lower in temperature, these little cracks start forming, and they're just surface cracks, so we should be good. So I'm gonna give it a bath in muriatic acid, and I'll get back to you guys right after that. Here I'm cleaning it up with a very aggressive wire wheel after the acid bath. I didn't show you the muriatic acid bath because I didn't really see a point in showing you guys and boring you with extra processes. The main reason I use the muriatic acid is to loosen up the scale that's on there, the forge scale, and then a very aggressive wire wheel cleans it right out. And here I'm just gonna start cleaning up my knife. I'm not trying to take off too much material, I'm just getting it a flattish surface. That way I can put it on my surface grinder so I can thin it out and get it the right dimensions that I want. It's still pretty chunky at this point, so there's gonna be a lot of material I take off. Now with that extra material off and the knife being probably a third of its original weight, I'm going to start getting my bevels in. Here I did a crappy job with the camera, so you can't really tell what I'm doing, but I'm just rounding off the top of the knife. I like to do this on my chef's knives because I think it looks better and it removes the risk of sharp edges on the top of the knife. It's gonna, gnaw on your hand or, accidentally touch you. And we're on to about 4-ish hours of hand sanding, maybe 5, I don't know, I lost count, but my hands did hurt afterwards. Alright guys, so the knife has been hand sanded all the way up to 800 grit. Everywhere on the spine and everywhere else. This thing would focus. Well, whatever. Alright guys, and for my handle construction, I'll be making it with this Manitoba maple burl I got from my buddy Justin at Rainy Day Forge. It's really, really beautiful shade of purple. It's stabilized and it's dyed, so it's very pretty, and it has some tint of black and some gold in there, or yellowish. It's probably from the natural wood, and it has some really, really pretty burls in there. So this is going to be our handle material. It's going to be that black paper micarta, another piece, and black paper micarta stacked up like that. It's going to be like so on my knife. I think it's gonna look really, really nice. And if you're interested in getting any of this, he still has some color left, I believe. I bought quite a few off of him, and he's also a YouTuber, so check out his videos. I'll leave a link to his channel down below. You can go to his website from there and get yourself some if he has any left. I know I bought out quite a few, but I'm pretty sure he has some left. So be sure to give that a check out, and let's start up on our handle. Here I decided to drill with my hand drill instead of my drill press because my drill press actually doesn't hold this size of drill bit. So I decided to do it by hand, and I'm doing hand files. I'm still not very good at getting these hidden tangs just right. If I had a mill and I could slot it out closer, I would get a nicer fit, but so far I have to do them by hand, and the fit isn't always the best. But I'm trying my best and I'm learning, so I hope to get better as I progress and tool up even better. Here I'm just using some sandpaper, and I'm flattening out all the individual surfaces. One trick I like to use is I'm putting on some wax on the knife, and I'm actually using CA glue with activator so I can put all the pieces together. Once I do my final glue up on the knife, the epoxy on the inside is also going to help hold it together. But the CA glue with this bonder is actually surprisingly extremely strong. I work in construction, and we use it whenever we're doing certain trim, and we're gluing it together before we put our nails in. We like to use CA glue, that way we can hold the edges and put them right where they need to be. And it actually holds extremely strong, and when done right, it'll actually rip the wood when you mess up and try to take it apart. So it's some really strong stuff. Here I'm just grinding up to some scribe lines that I have on this knife. I'm going for a wall type handle. Pretty much is an octagon handle, and I don't really do many of these guys, so I kind of just winging it. But it turned out pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with the end result. I might be doing more of these in the future, or maybe I'll make a jig. That way I can get more consistent results. and we go into our edge. This is where we're gonna see if we get the pattern that we wanted, and no, we don't. As much as it pains me to say, I didn't have any pattern in it. If you looked in it closely, you could see the individual ball bearings, but there wasn't any striking contrast in it. So I ended up leaving it overnight in the coffee so it gets super black, hoping to save the knife, and hopefully maybe that would create some contrast. And unfortunately, it didn't really do much. You can see in the pictures I'm going to show at the very end, and I'll explain a little bit more. Here I'm just gluing up my handle, doing it using an excessive amount of epoxy as per usual. It's better to have too much than not enough. And here I'm just going to sharpen my belt up to 1200 grit. And the results speak for themselves. This is a very thin and very sharp knife, and very comfortable with the handle as well. Here is a final look at the knife. You can see some minor cracks like there towards the heel, and they are surface cracks. You can't really see much, but the knife came out very pretty, especially with this handle and the different shades of purple and yellow and black in there. After staring at the knife for a very long time, I had to twist it at a certain angle, and you could see all the individual ball bearings, and it looked pretty cool. And you can see those cracks in there, but it's really difficult to see the pattern. You have to really look for it. And unfortunately, the camera doesn't pick it up as much as you can see it in person. I'll try my best to get some really up close pictures. Maybe you can see the pattern, and I'll post them onto my Instagram. So if you have an Instagram and you want to follow me, I'm gonna throw in a little shameless plug and ask you guys to subscribe and to go to my Instagram. The link is in the description down below. And I'll thank you guys very much for watching, and hopefully the next experiment project slash thing comes out better than this one. Overall, I'm very happy with the final results. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.